Tower of Power. A band I grew up listening to with the most famous horn section in the world. Their tenor player Tom Politzer has been with them since 2002, and he invited me to their show in Oslo, Norway.
The Tower of Power tour bus.
Here we are, yeah.
I'm so stoked to be interviewing you and talking about...
I'm so stoked to be meeting you too, because I've been just eating up your playing.
Oh, that's great. Great to hear, man.
Yeah.
Not only did I get to hang out with Tom and the band, but they also invited me on stage to play a saxophone solo with them.
Magnus Bakken joining us on tenor saxophone.
This is my conversation with a fantastic saxophone player, devoted to the music and a genuinely friendly and generous man.
You started out playing clarinet.
Yeah.
Did you always want to be a musician, or is that something that sort of came with the tenor sax?
That came with the bari sax, actually.
The bari sax.
Because I got really good on the clarinet, and I was playing in local youth symphonies, and I loved playing it, but I didn't, people said, do you want to do that? And I didn't see auditioning for a symphony orchestra as something I wanted to do. I wasn't sure I wanted to play the bari, but as soon as they convinced me to play in the jazz band, said, we're doing this tune Squib Cakes by Tower Power. And he says, Tower Power is their local band. And I go, they are? I had a few months to learn it. I got a fingering chart, went to my local music store. I knew the owner. He gave me a bunch of mouthpieces and reeds, and I sat in the practice room for 2 hours. He came out with this Autolink 7, like a 2.5 reed. I think I remember I played on it, and I knew I had to play it really loud, to fill the horn up. And one of the fun things was so we started jazz band, the teacher said, Tom, you're playing too loud, you're overbalancing the section. And the lead player was a friend of mine, the senior, he goes, yeah, it's a quality problem. So yeah, that was it. I was gone. I just wanted to play saxophone all the time. And then when I went to the local junior college, and they needed a tenor player in the band, so I was playing second, and they had a really good Mark 6 in really good shape at the school. So, and I was listening to lots of tenor players already, so I really wanted to play tenor. So I spent years touring around the country playing, in a circus band, and then going from there, I played on cruise ships.
Yeah.
And then after like 4 years of doing those things, I realized this is not going to go anywhere. I could save some money up, but I need to move back and see what real musicians really do.
Right.
How do you really make a living playing music?
Right.
So.
Well, you served your time.
Yeah.
What do you use for G up there? Sometimes I use just half. You saw it off?
I don't even know what I use. I don't think it matters up there.
Yeah.
The first guy I really tried to imitate a lot was David Sanborn, who was like one of my big heroes. I mean, I love him. We got to tour with David, and I became friends with David, and still very sad when he passed away. But I knew David pretty well. I got some good David Sanborn stories, if you like. But I remember I was playing in this, when I went to Cal, I did a couple of years in junior college, and then I went to study at Cal State LA. Bob Curnow had started a jazz program there. And so we started a little group with 3 horns on the side, right? And we got some gigs, and I wanted to do Carly's Song by David Sanborn on alto. And I thought I was killing it, Magnus. I really thought I was killing it. We recorded the whole gig on ADATs, and I was really excited to hear the recording. And I listened to the recording, and I just my ego went like this, because I sounded so much like an amateur. I went, how could I think I was playing so great, and I sound like an amateur? It's all wrong, and I got really depressed. For about almost 2 weeks. And then I said, I'm going to figure this out. Why do I sound wrong?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't so much my tone, it was my phrasing, it was my vibrato. Yeah. I'm trying to play a modern ballad, and I have no concept of what that vibrato is. So I started listening to 2 bars of Sanborn playing it, and then 2 bars of my recording, and I go, okay, what is vibrato? Depth and it's basically depth and speed. You know, we don't go sharp when we use vibrato. We go flat, and you can go, you know, as much as a half tone or more flat, depending on what register you're in, as you know, and how fast. So I started figuring out what his vibrato was, and I started out making vibrato lessons and bending exercises.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I started doing is like the A above on top of the staff. I'd play the A, and then I'd bend it down to a G sharp. Then I'd finger G sharp and play G sharp, finger A and match the pitch by dropping my jaw until I could get them to match exactly and almost try to sound the same.
Yeah.
And I started doing that, and then I started doing bending exercises. And then literally within about 4 weeks of doing that, a bunch of people came up to me, and I was studying other people's vibratos and stuff. And people came up to me and go, what did you just do to your playing? You sound so much better. And I said, I kind of got my phrasing together is what happened. And my private teacher at the time was a guy named Donnerfell when I was at Cal State LA. Donnerfell was an old guy, you know, he was already in his late 60s or 70s. He'd been in tons of studio work in the LA scene. He would sub on the Tonight Show, Johnny Carson Tonight Show band. He played in the Nelson Riddle Orchestra. And one of the things he always told me was, you know, if you can sound like yourself and sound good, he says somebody's going to want to hire you. I remember that really stuck with me. You know, sound like, don't try to eventually not sound like, if you can sound something different. And the other thing he told me, which was really good for me to hear, is he goes like, you might walk into a dive bar in Warsaw, Poland, and hear this guy just completely shredding changes. And you go, for every one of those guys that you hear for the first time new, there's at least 10 more guys just as good that you'll never hear about. So he says you can't let that bug you, and you can't have to, it's not about competition or stuff. He said, develop your own sound, play for yourself, and, you know, and it was really great because I always felt that pressure until then of just, you know, I remember, you know, when Pickett, somebody went to me and said, oh, you Pickett, we're having a tenor battle. And I go like, I said, I don't know about a battle. I was trying to have a conversation. Yeah, it's a language, you know. I'm not trying to beat someone up.
But you're trying to make a solo happen together.
Yeah, I'm trying to, you know, hear what he played and play something that corresponds to what they played.
Yeah.
You know.
It's funny you bring that up, because these past few days I've been making videos on social media about the jazz jam session culture.
I saw that one. It was great.
Because
that was fantastic.
I had some students.
I want to give you a hug.
That's great to hear, man.
Yeah, because I went like, thank you for saying that, because it's the same thing. It's like, you know.
So many old people in my comment section is like, no, this is the way jazz is supposed to be. This is the tradition. We gotta, if it worked for Charlie Parker.
Well, in my opinion, you're a dick if you're like that.
Oh, that's great.
I used to have a sticker on my old sax case that said, don't be a dick. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say that.
Also, I've done a few clinics for mainly high school students. I remember I was doing this school in Jacksonville, Florida, that was a music school, like a music performing arts school. And the lead alto player was really good, but he just carried himself with arrogance. I could just tell. And the first thing I said is like, I haven't done many of these clinics before. I think it's really important to, you know, not be an asshole. It's the first thing I said. I said, if you're the best player in a section, then you should try to help everybody play better and give them. And if it's frustrating for you, then, you know, seek out players better than yourself. You know, but I said the only time music is a competition is when you're auditioning for a job against other players.
Yeah.
Then it is a competition. But after that, it's not.
He told you about the cue, right?
Yeah, for the chords and stuff, yeah. I heard it on the live recordings anyway.
looking at the baffle, I knew Jody. So interesting, the way he makes the windows on his mouthpieces, right? His window kind of gets wide and then it kind of bullets down on the top. I get to try some of these, you know. Maybe you could hook me up. A lot of guys play these. Yeah. God,
And I mean, they have such a big range too, you know, so you can
and
get anything you want from them.
Use the ring ligature.
I use the ring ligature. It just
That's his too?
slides into place and then it's...
Seems pretty easy to use.
Yeah.
And everything?
Perfect.
You got a little
I'm
reverb
just
if you
gonna
need
do
it?
one year is perfect. You know you get the.
Mauro DeGioia, he's a really good friend of mine.
Oh yeah, he's the reed geek guy.
Yeah. And I remember when he was, before that, he just had an idea for this thing. And he worked on this one a little bit too, he said. He loves this mouthpiece. He keeps going, like, sure, you're not playing it? You don't want to give it away? But yeah, it's another classic Berg. So Norm played in the band before me. He's an incredible player. Check out his album. He was in the tenor chair before me. He plays everything. And he designed this mouthpiece. He's always been working on mouthpieces. He's done a lot of mouthpieces for me. That's bronze, that's why it's so heavy.
Oh wow,
It's huge. It was rhodium plated, but the rhodium plating's coming off. I played that a lot too. And I don't know, I went back to the Berg. It's, you know, every so often you want to feel something different. But that's, I call that like it's an auto link on steroids.
yeah.
Because it's very much of a link chamber. It's a huge chamber.
Yeah.
You see, and there's a pretty big tip opening. It's a big window.
Yeah, got a big size.
Yeah. So I got this thumb hook. This is an Ishimori thumb hook. So if you go to Tokyo, let me know because I'll set you up. And you have to go to Ishimori Music, which is this boutique. He makes great saxophones too. Makes mouthpieces.
Reeds.
The reeds are great. They also sell vintage horns, vintage mouthpieces, and it's an amazing. It seems small, but then it's like you try a horn, you go down in the basement, and then he's got a whole thing that's set up like a nightclub. I was trying out horns down there with him, and he had a bar with beer spots, and I said, "Is there beer coming out of that?" And he goes, "Yeah, you want some?"
Wow.
And then I needed a little work done on my saxophone, and I go up to the where all the technicians are. There's like 6 technicians here, or is it 5 and 5? And they've all got these, the white gloves on, and their stations are, you've been to many different guys, how they keep their benches.
Yeah.
Their benches were really orderly.
Yeah.
So I bring these thumb hooks. And I remember he put this one on there, and I go, I really liked it. I said, I want this. And I said, but I don't need the gold-plated one. And I said, just give me the brass one. It's fine. And he says, no, you don't understand. I'm giving this to you. I said, what? But check it out. I think it's really...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about listening to Tower Power when you were younger.
Yeah.
You must have been pretty stoked when you got the call to audition.
Oh, yeah. I was really in kind of a funk. I go I need a road gig, man. I really need a road gig. And I buckled down in 2002, and I just said, I'm going to practice every day because I've been in a bad practice funk. So I started practicing. I made a New Year's resolution to practice. I said at least a half hour every day. And that literally in about 5 days, that went to an hour and a half. I've always kind of peaked out at about 4 hours, in college. I don't know how guys practice 8 or 12 hours a day. And
I can't either.
And I can't, but I really feel like if I practice 3 or 4 hours the way I practice, I get a whole lot done. And I can get a whole lot done in an hour too. It was I remember it was the 19th of January, and I was practicing, and I get a phone call. And it's the manager for Tower Power, named Michelle Zarin, and she's a smoker. She had a voice like this. He's like, hey, is this Tom Politzer? And I said, yeah. And she goes, your name's come up from some of the guys in the band to audition. Would you like to audition for the band? And I said, of course. And I remember hanging up the phone, and I just said out loud in the room, I said, "This is my gig. This is my gig. I don't care who auditions. This is my gig." And I just kept doing that affirmation every day. I don't know if this one worked. I've done other affirmations that didn't work so well, but I was dead set. So I immediately did my got my guitar power CDs and just started playing along and listening to where the solos were, because I knew right away that their main thing was like, how do you solo over this music? And then the section playing. I wasn't even worried about the section playing. I've been playing in big bands all my life, you know, and horn sections. So I was a little nervous, but I was very much excited, right? And the first thing they wanted me to play on was Knock Yourself Out, which is when Lenny Pickett plays that 12-minute solo. I already knew I was going to let the rhythm section vamp for 8 bars before I started playing anything. So actually, after 8 bars, I decided to go another 8 bars, so 16 bars of vamp. And Emilio said to the lead singer at the time, Larry Braggs, he goes, "Is this guy ever going to play?" But anyway, I started solo really simple. I went on, and I didn't know how long I was playing, but apparently I'd been playing 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and he cut me off, and he goes, "That's enough. It's great," you know. So much of it is personality too. Yeah. Especially back then, because, you know, the band they all used to do drugs and party, and back in the day, and they almost lost their whole career, you know, to drugs and alcohol. Mimi and Emilio and Doc have been clean and sober now for 35, 36 years, 37, 38. I can't even remember. So I just, you know, kept quiet and hung. And, you know, if somebody asked me a question, I would talk. And Dave Garibaldi was really great to me, too. And everybody was great to me. But I remember I was at the band about 2.5 weeks. And we were playing in Zurich. And it was my birthday. And Emilio was messing with me. I know he was messing with me because he goes, "So Tom, the band had a meeting today." And I go, "You did?" I wasn't invited to this meeting. And he said, because he's going to be invited, he goes, "Welcome to Tower Power, you're hired." Oh, wow. And that was cool, yeah. I really can honestly say we all get along amazingly well, you know, and we're all friends.
Well, that's great. That's like the most important thing when you're on tour with people too. The social stuff is 90% of it. Playing is just a couple hours every night. Yeah, an hour and a half, and you were sitting up here talking about stuff. Yeah. Half of who you're playing for is the guys in the band. Yeah, you know, trying to interact with them and not worrying so much about the audience. After like 24 years with this band, do you guys still surprise each other on stage? Do you still like? Yeah, sometimes. I know Mark Van Wagenhagen, the bass player, and that's a big chair to fill, right? Because that was Rocco Prestia's chair, and he'll surprise me sometimes with some of the stuff he'll do bass line wise. Yeah, I'll go like, he'll see me, I'll turn around and go like, "Oh yeah, I like that." Also, Mike Jarrell, he was our lead singer for almost 2 years, and then he developed some vocal cord problems, and he had to drop out. It was really sad, but we already knew he was a keyboard player and an excellent keyboard player. So when our longtime keyboard player Roger Smith finally retired, we said, we're pretty sure this guy's going to work out. So he's been with us now. Gosh, it's been 2 years now. I mean, Dave Richards has been our lead player now for over 2 years, going on 3 years. And I just was really comfortable with his phrasing and everything right away. You know, he's just really, really accurate. And he plays trombone too. Yeah, which is a really hard double. Plus, you know, Dolfo was such a great section player too. You know, it's just so easy to play. Yeah. And then, you know, Doc and Emilio just sink right in, you know. I thought about asking you about the length of your solos, because you have some solos that are 8 bars and some that are 5 minutes or however long you want them to last.
They're all exact length except for What Is Hip. What have I got tonight? So, and he opens up some things. He surprised me a couple times, like when he did As Surely As I Stand Here. I remember we were rehearsing that like 10 years ago, and he goes, I'm thinking of putting a sax solo in here. He says, you want to play a solo on this? And I said, I'd love to play a solo on this. A ballad with chord changes?
Yeah.
Instead of one chord, you know? Oh, I have another solo on E minor. Oh, and this one's in E minor. What key is we in now? Oh, E minor. Oh, E7. Which is great because, you know, I remember when I started learning to play and I had to play in F sharp on the horn. And it was like, I had a really hard time as a kid, right?
Yeah.
And that was my favorite key.
Right? That and a B on the horn as well?
Yeah, B on the horn too, yeah. It's like, especially, you know, I'm playing Soul Vaccination.
Yeah.
E minor. But I love playing that. I have a little short solo on Nightclub, which is just, you know, first tenor F7, then to G7. But it's short. And then I have these little 8-bar commenting sections on the serious side. It's really super syncopated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so syncopated that sometimes when I don't feel like the rhythm section or somebody in the rhythm section isn't quite in sync, I basically tell that he kills my reverb. Just let me play to the bass and drums and hear the horns. You know, if I don't do that, sometimes somebody throws off my time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it's just like when I can't hear the time, and I'm not sure where the syncopation is, because that thing's it's really syncopated. So that playing Script Cakes, so I have a solo on that. I have a very short solo on a James Brown medley, and then the hip solo at the end. The day before, like this, I got to Groove. It's a really long solo. It's a set length, but it's long. And you get to start on an A7 for 8 bars before it goes to the E7.
How do you go about pacing yourself for the like longer solos? You talked about waiting for 16 bars in the audition, but
it's easy because, you know, now that I know when I play hip, I got the rhythm section to come down to nothing.
Yeah.
So I start playing that. I'll start playing very softly and rhythmically because I like doing that. I just love playing that way. Or just take my vocabulary that I have and try to mix it around differently.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's all I got. Then I look at somebody like Maceo and I go like, that guy can do more with 5 notes than anybody I've heard in my life. He'll take 5 notes and he'll just dance around those 5 notes for like...
But back to that about locking in with the rhythm section and feeling that your time's in the right place. I feel like that's 90% of my solo. If the time's not locking in, then like that's the bad solo.
And then also sometimes, you go to the front of the stage and the sound changes a little bit, and I have to really get like it happened the other night. I went up there and I was playing a ballad solo, and I was too loud in my ears for what I wanted to hear because they're not playing real loud. It's a ballad. Yeah. So luckily our sound man's on it, and I look at him and I just kind of point my sax down and he goes, whoop. I almost need, because you hear your saxophone through your teeth.
Yeah, right? Especially with the in-ears.
Right, you hear it through your teeth. So I almost kind of like my saxophone to be no louder than any other instrument. I mean, I want to hear myself no louder than any other instrument. You know, some people want to hear themselves more. I mean, and I'll even go even less sometimes, and maybe I'll crack one ear. Yeah. And then I'll get where I want to be, where I want to feel like I'm in the rhythm section. Yeah. I want to feel like I'm really inside of it, and I'm part of it, and then I'm just getting to dance around it. We've had the same Yamaha, something CX5 board for the last...
He mixes the same every night.
Yeah. And we have our monitor engineer has really good ears and knows what everybody wants. And so if we need to, we've done sound checks as fast as 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
For the 10-piece band, yeah. But we like to run tunes and stuff, so we'll go more like, at least a half hour, if not approaching the whole hour that we have for a sound check. And we use that time to rehearse tunes, right? It says, how do you learn new tunes? It's like, we do it at sound check.
Right.
And then once it gets pretty close, they go like, we're doing it tonight. You want to do it tonight? And people go like, okay. And he goes, and that's his philosophy too. He goes like, it's okay if you make a mistake. You'll learn it faster.
Yeah.
Have you ever played so many gigs in a row with the same set, maybe like you find yourself daydreaming or spacing out for 8 bars?
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously not to the point that you guys have.
Happens a lot and so very hard to go. And I've not made a mistake and I've been played tight, but it's like in my mind, I'm thinking about, okay, I'll be home soon. It's like, what am I going to do?
Yeah, I've had that happen when playing horn section.
Yeah.
Parts I know really well.
Not when you're soloing.
Not when I'm soloing. No,
it's never happened when I'm soloing.
But in horn section for sure, people in the audience would be surprised at the stuff you think about when you're on stage.
Yeah. Especially if you have the part memorized. There's so much of it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're in a band that's playing at least, 60, 70, 80 gigs a year, I think everybody should memorize the music. If you're only doing like 10 or less, 12, it's kind of hard. There's a really great sax player, a good friend of mine in LA named Alex Budman, fantastic player. He's like that. He memorized. I remember going to doing a big band gig before he moved to LA in San Francisco. He's playing lead alto. He goes, I have the book memorized. I go, big band music that's the complicated stuff to have memorized.
Yeah.
It's not like the same as playing in an R&B or a funk band. I forgot to ask him. I don't know if he has a photographic memory or not, but he might. If you're ever in LA, you should run into him. He's a great guy. Hi, Alex, in case you watch this. My teacher used to call these things surrounds, where you approach a chord tone from like a whole step above and a half step below.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
Enclosures.
Enclosures, yeah, enclosures now they're called. I think the first time I saw that was a Chad LB video about enclosures. I go like, this is the same thing Don Rafael was telling me to practice back, 30 years ago,
yeah.
And I go like, okay, I got to start, doing that too. So, but you have some nice stuff on your.
I learned them as approach tones.
Approach tones. That's the other one too. Yeah,
that's coming from Joe Viola's teaching.
Right.
He taught it as approach tones.
So you had lessons with Joe?
No, but just people who studied with him, Garzone and Rick DiMuzio and some other cats.
I studied with a guy named Vic Morosco, who studied with Joe Allard.
Oh yeah.
So, and he mainly, we talked a lot about how Joe did stuff, but Vic mainly taught me how to play flute correctly. He said, your flute playing is weak. And I go, yeah, but he got it up to where it's good. You probably play flute?
No.
No, okay.
No clarinet, no
I feel
flute.
a little better now.
I own a flute, and I've used it on a couple of recordings, but that's in my...
clarinet?
No, my flute. I have a flute that I don't know.
You play clarinet?
No.
Okay.
I only play sax. I've never done any theater because of this, so
yeah, I did theater.
Takes away some gigs, but
in the late '80s, I did some, like I told you, I was doing these little theater works and local productions, and just also it's a lot of just the same the same pressure of when you come in there and you have to read and play perfectly, Yeah, I enjoy doing that, and my sight reading's still pretty good. Yeah, it used to be much better, but it's still pretty good. Yeah. If it's like, Earth, Wind, and Fire and Tower Power and that kind of, syncopated 16th notes stuff, that's not a problem. Yeah. If it's big band stuff and all of a sudden you got a sax solo at 300 and a bunch of,
that's hard.
Notes flying by and you try to read that, it's like, and it's so funny. It's so often if you have a minute to look at it, you go like, actually, that lays pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then you go like, oh, okay, but there's some guys I know in LA too, they can pretty much sight read that stuff. It's like incredible. It's like your eyes have to move ahead.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not even the sight reading that's the hard part. It's the people who notate it. If you get like a chart that's double sharps or even just like unlogical
or just not barring your beats together on syncopated 16th notes.
Yeah. Awful.
If we're gonna do one more, we gotta do one with Norway's own Magnus Bakken joining us on tenor saxophone. If they're asking for it, we're gonna ask them the eternal question. And the eternal question is, what is hit? Come on, people, put your hands together. Get out your seats up top. Come on down to the front. Mighty with power and power. This is the final song of the night. We're gonna ask the question, what is
the horn section I'm playing with these days. Before I came to that horn section, they played on some Ole Børud albums. There's a story from the Tower of Power tour bus that on one of the tours on the tour bus, that Tower of Power had listened to that horn section. So I wanted to check if that's something you could verify or not.
What's the artist's name again?
Ole Børud. It's like
Ole Børud.
Oh yeah,
Ole Børud. Oh yeah. No,
so
I turned everybody onto that band.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I heard it and I go like, and then I actually reached out to Ole, and he came to a gig about 12 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I play on Ole's latest record.
Is his latest stuff on Spotify?
Yeah.
Yeah. You got any sax solos there?
I got 2 sax solos on the latest album.
I'm gonna look to see.
Listen to that.
I'm gonna.
No. Stop. Next question.
I like the way you think, so. So
sleepwalking again. That's
okay. You're on there. That's it.
the one I'm on.
Yeah.